I got the Anua 10% niacinamide tranexamic acid serum in one of the Korean advent calendars. I've been trying it out. Let's talk about it. So this serum claims to help improve the appearance of the skin, skin tone, skin clarity. What is going on? A whole lot actually in this little 30 ml bottle for 22 bucks. You get 10% niacinamide, but you also get tranexamic acid 4%. Now, tranexamic acid is an ingredient that is actually given in pill form by mouth to treat, well, melasma. But there is some evidence that applying it topically directly to the skin can have some specific benefits. More research is needed. There's some question as to whether or not it actually can get into the skin, can affect meaningful change. But there are clinical studies that demonstrate benefit from applying tranexamic acid to the skin. Specifically, not necessarily for hyperpigmentation, melasma, although there is a bit of research there, but surprisingly, it shows a lot of promise for being particularly helpful for persistent facial redness, whether that be related to rosacea. Yes, there are clinical studies looking at topical tranexamic acid for rosacea, or post-inflammatory erythema that commonly occurs with acne. And I know it's something a lot of you guys struggle with. I have dedicated videos on how to fade post-acne red marks. They can be just as stubborn as post-acne dark marks. Now, there is some research that applying tranexamic acid to the skin can help reduce the number of acne inflammatory spots, specifically the papules, the little red bumps, and the pustules, commonly referred to as pimples, as well as reducing redness, post-acne redness, and post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. Tranexamic acid can help with hyperpigmentation because it basically works by blocking the interaction between the pigment-producing cells, the melanocytes, and the neighboring keratinocytes, basically getting in the way of that transfer of pigment to the surrounding skin. There's some evidence that suggests tranexamic acid may put the brakes on abnormal blood vessel growth, angiogenesis, which is probably why it's helpful for redness and for persistent redness in rosacea, which is notoriously stubborn to treat without leaning into laser treatments, pulse dye laser specifically. It's also thought that topically applied tranexamic acid can inhibit something called PAR2, and ultimately that translates to improved barrier function, skin barrier integrity, which probably helps explain to a certain extent why it is so helpful for redness, not just for the potential anti-angiogenesis properties, but also by improving barrier function, you're going to limit penetration of things that are irritating, you're going to limit water loss, and ultimately improve barrier function, reducing irritation that can drive more redness as well as stubborn hyperpigmentation. We have a lot more research behind tranexamic acid consumed orally for treating melasma, for treating hyperpigmentation, than we do for applying it to the skin. But there is some research there, and importantly, it is clinical, not just mouse models, not just cells in a dish. Obviously, more research is needed, but as a cosmetic ingredient, it shows a lot of promise. And importantly, in the clinical studies that we have, it appears to be very well tolerated. Side effects are uncommon. The most common side effect from applying tranexamic acid to the skin appears to be a little bit of redness, maybe some skin peeling, all of which in the clinical studies is alleviated by, well, applying a moisturizer. So this product has 4% tranexamic acid, which is a reasonable percentage. Many of the clinical studies use in the ballpark of 3 to 5%. There is one study looking at 10%, but I would say 4% is a reasonable starting point. We don't have good dose response curves or anything of that sort for applying this to the skin. 4% seems reasonable. This product also has niacinamide, as do many products, right? It's one of the most frequently talked about ingredients on my channel. Almost every single video I do, I feel like niacinamide comes up. It's a B vitamin that is an antioxidant. It's anti-inflammatory, and it is helpful for your skin barrier. Ultimately, again, that's going to help reduce irritation, redness, penetration of things that aggravate the skin. And for people who have breakout prone skin, acne, having things that help with your skin barrier ultimately can help you not only tolerate your acne treatments better, which can be dry and irritating, but ultimately can help with clearing the acne, playing a supporting role, I will say, not necessarily a direct treatment. And there is some evidence that niacinamide applied to the skin can be helpful for people with acne. Niacinamide also is helpful for redness, and like tranexamic acid, it helps to get in the way of the transfer of those pigment packets from melanocytes to surrounding keratinocytes, ultimately making it a good ingredient ingredient for dark spots. Because it's an antioxidant, you also can make an argument for its use and its inclusion in skincare aimed at sort of anti-aging, because it can help defend against oxidative stress that would otherwise damage like proteins, lipids in our skin. Now, the clinical studies that we have use niacinamide anywhere from like 2 to 5%. This has niacinamide at 10%. Now, that's on the higher end. We don't have research saying that 10% is better, and be aware of the fact that higher percentages of ingredients don't necessarily mean more effective. If anything, it can be more irritating. And I find that a lot of people verbalize that they are sensitive to niacinamide. They feel it burns and stings. So I think it would be more reasonable to have niacinamide in this product at like 4 or 5%, but provided you are not irritated by 10%, great. This also has polyglutamic acid, which is one of my favorite skincare ingredients. Kind of hard to come by. It is hydrating and helps improve moisture retention in the skin, but it also kind of helps to a certain extent with reducing water loss, minimizing penetration of irritants. It kind of puts this little hydrating veil, if you will, on the skin surface, and it also helps to limit the breakdown of hyaluronic acid. Ultimately, that's going to help with improving water content. The reason I like this ingredient so much is because I find that I see a visible difference in my skin oftentimes when I use products that have polyglutamic acid in terms of not only an improvement in skin plumpness, firmness, basically signs of better hydrated skin, but also I do see an appreciable improvement in just overall elasticity as well as skin softness. I also wanted to mention with regards to hyperpigmentation that the serum has 2% alpha-arbutin. Alpha-arbutin inhibits tyrosinase. That's the enzyme responsible for pigment production in the melanocyte. I like the fact that you have a couple of different ingredients that address hyperpigmentation in slightly different ways, and ultimately I think that makes for a product that potentially could be more powerful, more impactful for helping to improve the appearance of dark spots than say a single ingredient on its own. Speaking of other ingredients that can play a supporting role in terms of dark spots as well as redness, you have a variety of botanic ingredients in the serum that are loaded with anti-inflammatory compounds and antioxidants that ultimately offer the potential to reduce inflammation, irritation in the skin. These include compounds from centella as well as from artemisia. You'll notice this serum is pink, and the reason it's pink, I'm almost certain, is because it has cyanocobalamin, vitamin B12, which in skincare products imparts a pink color. A year ago at this point, I want to say, my gosh, I reviewed a pink serum from The Ordinary that had vitamin B12, and you'll recall from that review, if you caught it, that vitamin B12 applied to the skin shows promise for helping with some of the symptoms and the overall extent, if you will, of disease of atopic dermatitis, a type of eczema where you get these flares of itchy red skin, and like many of these other ingredients, is pretty well tolerated. Now, there's not a ton of research about B12 applied to the skin for atopic dermatitis, but it does appear to be helpful. Now, when I mention B12 in skincare, a lot of people are concerned that it might, quote unquote, break them out, aggravate their acne. There's no evidence that this happens with topically applied vitamin B12, although there is some association with taking high doses of B12 supplements triggering acne breakout, as well as high doses of other B vitamins. Check out my video on dietary supplements that break you out. I talk more about it in that video, but applying it to the skin does not appear to aggravate acne. This has some other hydrating ingredients aside from the polyglutamic acid. It's got hyaluronic acid, and it also has panthenol. Peach flower extract, I'm not entirely sure what exactly that is offering. Now, this is a fragrance-free serum. However, if you are allergic to fragrance, some of these botanic extracts may contain compounds that cross-react with your allergy and may cause issue for you, but it doesn't have any aroma, scent. It doesn't have any kind of earthy odor to it. Another interesting ingredient in this is olive oil. Now, olive oil people love to romanticize, but interestingly enough, applying olive oil, like straight olive oil, to your skin has actually been shown to worsen transepidermal water loss. It's not really that great as a moisturizing ingredient on its own. Now, when it's included in products that are formulated with other moisturizing ingredients, it doesn't appear to be an issue in terms of worsening potentially dry skin. And olive oil does have a variety of anti-inflammatory compounds, antioxidants. It is an emollient, so it may soften dry skin. How have I been using the serum? You can use it 1 to 2 times a day. day. It's going to be the first step in your skincare routine after cleansing to just apply a couple of drops is all you need. It has actually a very good spread on the skin. Just a couple of drops to the face. And the nice thing about this product I found is that it is very thin in texture and consistency. It is a good layering serum. You can put this on and you can put something else on like sunscreen, which you're absolutely going to want to do if you're incorporating this into the morning routine, because you're not going to fade redness or dark spots without sun protection, regardless of whatever ingredients are in the serum you are using. Sunscreen goes on over this beautifully. It absorbs into the skin and dries down very quickly. It's not very oily at all. It's not the least bit oily, which is great because oilier serums, cosmetics, even those that are very silicone rich, they oftentimes butt heads with things that we try and apply on top, especially sunscreen, which needs to kind of lie down, form that protective film on the skin. A lot of people end up getting sunscreen pilling, those little balls that roll up when they put sunscreen on a bunch of different products. This I think will be more than fine. I had no issue. Tried multiple different sunscreens layered on over this. Not a problem whatsoever. And then in my nighttime routine, I have used it. I also find that moisturizer's gone over it just fine. Now, even though it's got a lot of really great hydrating ingredients, I have to say, I put this on and I tried using it like at nighttime. I kind of played around with, could I just use this and see what it feels like without anything else? It's not very moisturizing. As it dries down, the skin feels like it still needs moisturizers. I didn't really find it to be the most hydrating, moisturizing serum, but if you're going after the ingredients to address dark spots, redness, you might not necessarily care about that, especially if you're already using a moisturizer. Overall, I've tolerated this quite well. I find it to be very soothing, and I do feel as though my skin tone when I'm using this consistently does look a bit brighter, more even, and I think that it has really helped me in terms of having less irritation overall. I do use those single blade razors to shave like some of the peach fuzz off of my face, and that can actually be very irritating, irritate my skin. It's hit or miss. That's why I use the single blade ones. As a side note, they're less irritating than like a multi-blade leg shaver razor, but I still do get a lot of irritation for those, and I have found that this particular serum seems to support my skin needs around that, and I haven't gotten the irritation. Maybe it is related to this. Who knows? I also use, moisturizer and of course sunscreen and a moisturizing base. But all that to say, I have really enjoyed it. I think it is a good serum, provided you are not someone who is irritated by niacinamide, especially at higher percentages. I think it is a well-formulated serum. It's hard to predict with something like this to what extent you're going to see results because it is a cosmetic. It hasn't been put through a rigorous clinical trial as its own product. The ingredients have research to support their efficacy, but the product formulation overall, this particular product, we don't really have clinical trials to predict how efficacious it might be for you. And the extent of results that you might see from something like this are going to be very dependent on the nature of the redness and the hyperpigmentation that you might be dealing with. Hyperpigmentation and redness tend to be a lot more stubborn, a lot trickier to fade, take a lot longer to fade if the underlying inflammatory process, say acne, went on untreated, uncontrolled for a long time. The more inflammation in the skin, the more stubborn the post-acne dark marks and redness, for example, are going to be to fade. But if, say, you just had a little zit here or there and it healed with a little dark mark that you typically get, and it takes time for it to fade, you might find that this particular serum helps it fade a bit more quickly, provided, of course, you are not irritated by it, which will vary a lot from person to person, but it doesn't have any ingredients that are a lot more typical of triggering irritation. There are some similarities between this serum and the serum that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago from e.l.f. Like, both have tranexamic acid, both have 10% niacinamide, but that one has a few different ingredients, more so aimed at exfoliating. So if you want a serum with similar ingredients to what I've just talked about here, but you're looking for something that will also exfoliate, maybe to improve skin texture, exfoliate the pore, reducing blackhead and whitehead formation, check out my review on that line. I'm going to put it on the end slate. Watch that one next, because not only do I review that serum, but I also talk about their cleanser and their moisturizer in that line. But if you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye!